Ready.
Looks like we are in.
We
Oh,
are now in.
very good. All right. So, welcome everyone. We are just extremely excited. This will be our final financial literacy streaming session for the fiscal term. We will be back in the fall of this year to start again on various financial literacy topics. Um, Last month, I had some dynamic women with me on a panel. We are partnering with Mcqueen Massey. Mcqueen is the CEO of Financial FIQ. She's created these financial flashcards to help aid in the discussion of financial literacy, since that seems to be a topic that is very taboo within underserved communities. And we definitely want to break the ice so that people are able to learn the impact of their financial decisions. So again, I will have Mcqueen and the rest of the panel introduce themselves, and then we're going to dive into her financial flashcard sessions again and kind of talk about what's on our hearts and mind and things that we've learned from a financial standpoint. And for those that are tuning in for the first time, or even perhaps, have caught a few sessions over the past few months, feel free to go back. There's tons of, material out there. We've been talking about the home buying process. We've been talking about how your credit scores are calculated. We've also been talking about how to repair your credit if it does need repairing. We've talked about how to build a solid financial foundation and what that looks like. So these are all things that we've been getting the discussion started around. So feel free to go back and check those out in the meantime. But without further ado, I will kick it off to Mcqueen Massey to start us off with a round of introductions, and then we'll get started with her flash game card.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bernice. As Bernice mentioned, I am Mcqueen Massey, a third year doctoral student where I actively study financial inclusion. I'm also the owner and CEO of Financial IQ, where we help normalize discussions around finances so that everyone can grow comfortable and confident in having such simple discussions, which people think are generally hard and complex, but they don't have to be. And so we did create a game card that can help assist with discussions. And so you all will be seeing that today. But this is just my introduction. And so I will now pass it off to Sharonda.
Hi, you guys. I am Sharonda Everson. I come to you as a home mortgage consultant. I've been in the mortgage industry with the Department of Banking and Finance since 2003 when I graduated college. And I tell you, over the years, I have learned so much. I have been exposed to a lot, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And one thing that I do specialize in is helping people get mentally as well as financially prepared for certain aspects of their life, which mainly includes purchasing a home, which is one of the biggest financial investments that you make. So, and I've personally been in a lot of personal situations as well as help other people, fix or hone in on some of their situations. So I look forward to joining in on the panel discussion tonight.
I can go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Nia Hill. I am a 2020 graduate of Howard University, and I'm currently at Columbia studying nonprofit management. And I am also one of the co-authors of Graduate to Freedom, and my other co-author is here right now, Angel Stallings. But that book is about our journeys graduating from both an HBCU and a PWI debt free. And although, we had different journeys, for instance, my journey was not having to take out any loans while graduating to freedom, while Angel's journey was having to take out loans, but being able to pay that back. Both journeys ended up leading to the same result, which is graduating debt free. And so we want to help as many people out with that resource. So stay tuned with that. But yeah, that's a little bit of who I am.
Awesome. So as Nia mentioned, I'm Angel Stallings, also a co-author for Graduate to Freedom, and she already shared a little bit about my journey. Aside from that awesome book that we're really excited to launch, I'm a recent associate at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I graduated from Central Michigan University. I'm trying to think of everything. I own a business called Youth and Justice Apparel. I finally sported the shirt today, so really excited about that, where we just make sure that the conversation of faith and justice, we know that they're intrinsically inseparable, and so we can't have one without the other. And I'm really excited for just that message to go forth. But I'll stop talking. I think that's me in a nutshell. But yeah, excited to be here again.
Thank you all so much. And so just a recap of what we did last month was Women's International Month. And so most of our topics were related to women and how we are impacted financially and how we carry and move the needle forward financially as women. However, this discussion is going to be a little bit more general, where I am literally going to just pick random cards as it relates to general questions. I think I have expense questions in here, savings, investment, debt, and credit questions. And so any question that is asked, if you feel the need to speak up to answer it and you have anything on your heart that you would like to say, please feel free to do so. And wherever that conversation leads us, we will allow the Lord to just simply take us there. Is that all right with you all?
Perfect. Yes, perfect.
Okay, awesome. And so the first one that I have here is a general question, and it asks, who is on your money team? And so this could be a financial advisor, a banker, a financially stable friend, but we know that, we cannot make it in life without having support in all aspects of our life. And so who is on your money team? And if you would like to explain why they're on your money team, that will also be great.
I'll go first. I believe by default, my husband is on my money team because we're building together. We're building a life together, have children together, and moving forward. So I think by default, your spouse will be on your money team. I also have actually two very good girlfriends that I speak to in great detail of what we have going on, what we plan to have in the future, and that's needed for accountability. Because you know how sometimes we can say, yes, I want to do this, I want to do that, but then you don't have anybody holding your foot to the fire saying, okay, sis, what's going on? So yeah, so my husband and I have two good girlfriends, and also one of my grandparents. It's not a consistent thing, but sometimes that old school wisdom will pull you through. So, yeah.
That's great.
So something interesting, I've just been invited to a financial accountability group with another young lady who is in the process of paying off her student loan debt. She's a lawyer. She has her own practice. And she's actively getting after that debt. I think her debt was in the six figures at some point, and she's gotten it down to like maybe 50,000, and she's getting after it. And so she started this, it was just her and I originally, and we were meeting once a month before an accountability. But man, it's been working because I just recently launched a bookkeeping business. And, I'm not the type of person that I'm the type of person that has to research everything to the nth degree before I even get my foot out there. So she's been really pushing me and helping me from an accountability standpoint there. And then we also talk through, her ideas and things that's going on in her business, and, and making sure that she's staying on track with paying those student loans off. And it's been really working. And we've gotten another young lady that just joined us just last month who's adding, more things into the mix. So who knows where this is going to turn into, but it's been very, very enjoyable. And like Sharonda said, accountability is very much needed when you have financial goals.
I'll say I'm really in the growing stages of this, who's on my money team. Initially, when you answer the question, the first answer was God. Like, it's been me and him getting these finances together, because it was hard to find those examples initially. So it was really just me knowing what the word said about how to handle your money, making sure I was tithing, things like that. And so from that perspective, it really was just me and him. But as the other women were talking, it made me realize, oh, I actually do reach out to this person for advice. So my goddad, he's really good with like retirement and just investing. And he's somebody who, I don't believe he went to school. He's a police officer by trade, but he is really good with investing. And also an aunt. She's actually my god sister's aunt, but she's my adopted aunt now. And I called her up when I initially got my job and said, hey, what should I be investing in to get my 401k together? And we sat on a call for hours and just were talking. So in that sense, I do have those people who I believe are in positions that I hope to one day be in. So otherwise, I feel like it's somewhat hard to get a money who may be sometimes my age and in the same mindset of like saving and maybe not splurging as much, but we're getting there. It's in the process of being built.
Yeah, it definitely should. And it's really hard to identify a money team while you're young, but I think all individuals should have a money team. And so like for you, for you as an example, not necessarily knowing who, but then having the discussion and realizing, oh, this person definitely is a part of that team. And so just making sure that we are aware and intentionally identifying who is actually on that money team of ours. I think that that's certainly important. And so to piggyback off of Bernice, you mentioned something about debt. And so I have a question here, and it asks, do you believe debt is a good or bad thing? And if you could, describe good and bad debt. So who would like to tackle that?
I can go first on that one, since I'm in the home buying industry and we dive very, very deep into a person's debt before they add on debt to purchase a home. Okay. Hold on. What was the question? Good debt and bad debt?
Yeah, if you could, do you believe debt is a good thing or a bad thing? And then if you could give an example, what is good and bad debt?
Debt can be a good thing if you have the wisdom to know how to utilize it. Debt is a bad thing if you're reckless and unfocused, okay? Or you're impatient, okay? And the reason why I say that is because honestly, in our society, debt, it can also be used as a form of slavery, modern day slavery. So when you look at it like that, one of the best ways to keep someone enslaved is to make sure that they're in a lot of debt so that they can keep working and they can be, you can kind of hold them under your thumb. Okay. Now, in regards to debt being used in a good way, is knowing what to use that debt for, knowing the term that you're staying in it, and your plan to get out of it. That's very, very important, especially when you're younger. And it also depends on who taught you about debt. Sometimes we learn directly and indirectly about debt. I learned about my first payday loan from a family member. Okay. And it was normal. So when it was also
Wow.
a trap. Think about it. You know, debt can be used as leverage if you're taught that.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to chime in on that? Especially the whole debt can be used to enslave you part.
Oh, absolutely. Debt can definitely enslave you, especially when you don't know about it. You don't know about the power of debt and how it can enslave you specifically. I think even like with credit cards, I think that's one of the main, ways people are enslaved by debt. You're just swiping away and you're like, oh, I can pay it back, or I can pay it back. And then you're taking out, multiple credit cards, and then you're maxing them out. And then here comes interest. And I just don't think people know how debt really works and how it can enslave you. But jumping back to the question, I do believe that there's good debt and bad debt. So like good debt if you're investing in your business or into your legacy by, taking out a loan for your business, or, taking out a loan to purchase a house. I believe that's good debt in my opinion, because you're investing into your future. But bad debt, I would consider, again, like the credit cards. I feel like that's a really big major way, especially with people my age. We just really, we don't use it to our advantage. It helps to build credit. So again, it depends on the person using a credit card. But if those are, people out there who are just swiping away, again, purchasing things that they don't need, that's how it could become bad debt. And I also want to say that debt could also be a transformational journey. So there are people out there who may not know much about debt, but then when they get into it, they're like, okay, I got to get disciplined now. I got to get a job, got to do this, got to do that. And so debt can really mature and humble someone really quickly. And so I think it can also be a good thing in that aspect. But yeah, I definitely do think there is good debt and bad debt.
I also want to add that another form of bad debt is too much debt. Mm-hmm. In comparison to what you can reasonably handle. Because sometimes, you get, it's like if you go to someone and say, okay, I need to borrow $200, but they said that I can borrow up to $500. Mm-hmm. And then the repayment terms for the $200 deal could be totally different than the $500 deal. So also with your debt, learning what the difference in the terms are and knowing what's feasible for you to where you can pay it off on time. And if you need to get into debt again, you can show credibility that you can borrow money and pay it back. Because that's another thing that you want to use as leverage. You want to be able to prove that you can properly handle debt. Right. Because if you have a history of not, then that messes up your chances for borrowing money again if you need it.
So I also want to piggyback on the topic of being a slave when it comes to debt, right? So I've wrestled with debt, even if I knew better, right? But I wrestled with that until until 5 years ago, y'all. 5 years ago, I finally got my life together. And it was one of those things where I would have the credit card debt, I'd come up with a plan, pay it back down, but I was not changing any of my habits. And so it was just a cycle that I'm going in a circle and I'm not accomplishing anything. In the meantime, the years are going by. So then I started following Dave Ramsey. Now, he's a whole nother different animal, right? And he's all the way conservative. And I'm not even going to debate whether or not he's right or wrong. But he does have some great principles. But he believes that all debt is bad debt and that everything should be about the cash and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not getting into that. What I did learn from following him was to calculate the amount of money that goes out of my check every pay period to somebody else versus what I'm able to keep in my bank account. And when I realized I am working to give myself an allowance like I'm a kid and everybody else getting my money, I'm like, oh wait, no, we got to cancel this because I want, so it really got me to paying off everything. And so I used his baby steps, paid off everything with the exception of my mortgage. And now I'm like, man, if I get this mortgage, you ain't gonna be able to tell me nothing. That's all my check coming to me. So when it comes down to saying, well, what debt is bad debt, the question is, am I a slave? And what percentage of my paycheck is going to other people versus what I can keep in my house?
Absolutely. I think going back to Sharonda's point that I really like that she said, and she didn't say it explicitly, but good debt and bad debt is really contingent on the wisdom that you have or the lack of wisdom that you have. It's kind of what it boils down to. And I think that that's really important. And so to piggyback on a little bit of what you all have stated and your answers to that particular question, then should someone pay down their debt or should they invest?
I believe they can do a combination of both. Mm-hmm. It depends on their plan, because that's going to dive in deeper. Like, what is your purpose? Mm-hmm. Here's an example. I had a person that was consulting with me regarding their financial plan. They had $10,000 in savings, and they had $5,000 in credit cards. So the thing is, they like the idea of having that money in savings mentally. So when I asked, well, what are you keeping balances on the credit cards for? And then it is something that pulled at their mind and pulled at their heart. The thought terrified them to take that money from savings to be completely debt free. So when you think about it from that perspective, sometimes, you have to look like, are you letting petty stuff get in your own way? Because it looks good to log in to Bank of America and see that check the savings account that say $10,000, because some people have never saved that much before. However, you got this debt sitting out here accumulating interest, and it's not serving you, but you don't realize it because, So I hope that example makes sense. Have any of you ever been in a situation like that or mentally blocked?
This is exactly how I kept yo-yoing on the credit cards, because I didn't have savings. I just didn't want to spend it.
Yeah. You don't want to spend that money.
No.
And I'd rather pay interest. And the thing is, sometimes it's unconscious. You don't even realize it. Like when you make your $100 payment to the credit card company, do you really go back and look at your statement and see how much of that $100 went towards principal and how much went towards interest? Like, would you really feel comfortable knowing that of the $100 you paid, 70 went towards to pay down the balance and $30 went to their pocket?
Right.
Like if it was really broken down. So I think people really beginning to understand, what's really happening and how, to a certain degree, how it's easy to be distracted.
Yeah.
And overlook those things because it's not hurting you.
So I just had one thing I want to mention about this topic. Because when it comes to investing, I think that people need to understand the number one advantage to investing and making it work for you is time. You gotta have time. So I think that if people are like Angel and Nia and they're young and they're getting started, get the debt out the way. That way you have full range of time to invest. And, that's one of the biggest things that I regret, is that I didn't take enough advantage of that opportunity in my youth. But if you're older, like myself, and I'm heading into mid 40s, and you're just now getting out of debt, honey, you're going to have to split that up because it's almost time for us to retire.
It's right around the corner too. Like it'll be here before you know it. And life comes at you fast. And then on top of that, one of the reasons why you want to do it while you're young is because when you start expanding your family via marriage or children, those are other expenses that come along that it won't stop the show, but it may add some obstacles to it. And then on top of that, you have to teach them too.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Wow. Okay, y'all dropping gems tonight. Go ahead. Go ahead, Angel.
No, I think the original question was just, should you save or pay down debt or invest, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's
And
correct.
so I'll say, just from my personal experience, specifically with, that loan I took out, or those loans I took out in college,
Mhm.
the conversation was, okay, once you get this extra money, it was at the point basically, and we talk about it in the book, of, okay, my loans are already taken out, but now I'm at a place where I finally don't have to take out any more loans. Do I take the additional money I'm getting now and pay off the loans, or do I save that, hold on to it so that I can pay for my future semesters of college? I think I had like one more semester left. And so really, by God's grace, I got the knowledge and the wisdom to pay off my debt beforehand, and not let that interest accumulate, and then really trusted him to provide the rest, which he absolutely did, like above and beyond. And so I really can't talk about this debt-free journey without acknowledging God. But I really believe, yeah, yes, like that's so necessary though, of not getting comfortable with seeing a certain amount in your bank account, because truly it comes back. Like once you get that debt off your plate, off your chest, that money comes back and it starts growing in ways you couldn't imagine. And I get to see that now. But like you said, now being able to invest freely once I started working and signed up for the 401k, and now I can invest the max amount. Like there were certain people saying, oh, I don't want 37% taken. I'm like, take the 37% out, because I know it needs time to grow. And I don't mind sacrificing that right now, because long term, I know I'm going to see a huge return on that investment. So I think a lot of times, especially with our age group, a lot of people want to get quick, what is it, get rich quick stuff. Like, let me hurry up and invest. Let's see what went up today. Let me try to invest in that. Let me take my money out, put it in something over here. And I don't subscribe to that mindset. You want to put your money away and let it work for you, instead of working daily trying to keep up with all the ebbs and flows of the stock market, because you will surely have your days where you're on one side or the other of it. So I think I see that way too much with our age group. And it's like, let's pause. Let's invest wisely. And I think sometimes we have to have that conversation. Don't just invest and throw your money into it and expect a return tomorrow, because it's not happening. And that's where a lot of people are losing money. So if that's the case, if you're inexperienced in it, I say save your money until you get the wisdom to start investing properly.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. Awesome. And so all of you have touched on this a little bit. And so I'm going to ask to probe it out a little bit more. So, what are your money fears? I heard not being able to see the money in the savings account, or not having enough in your bank account, which is why you didn't want to pay off debt. But what are some money fears that you all have?
So I'll go first. Oh, Sharonda, did you want to go?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, we kind of talked about earlier the psychology of money and how we handle our money based on, emotional needs and psychological, the way you think and all of that kind of stuff. And, one of my biggest, basic need is security. I mean, I just got to be safe. I got to be safe on top of safe on top of safe. Oh, so that kind of feeds into, the way I save.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest fear is like to lose my job and have absolutely no idea how I'm going to stay in my house or eat the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds really basic, but I mean, at the start of the pandemic, you can just look at the sheer panic that was happening among people for just a few weeks of the shutdown. And it's like, how I'm going to eat tomorrow. And if anyone is living to the extent that, a week can go by and you're on the streets, you are in a dangerous place.
Yeah.
So that's just my biggest money fear, and it shapes my habits and how I save.
I'll say, because fear is such a strong word. For me, I think a basic one is just living paycheck to paycheck, because I've seen that growing up. I didn't like that. I didn't like the cash connection stops and all those things, getting money in advance. So that, I guess, is one fear. But I think being where I'm at now, I would say is my fear is being stuck, like stuck in a situation that I'm unhappy in, simply because of finances, simply because, a job is paying me XYZ. Like, I love the freedom, which we talk about in the book, Graduate to Freedom. It's more than not having student loan debts. It's the freedom that you get outside of or after graduation to actually have to make choices for yourself and not be tied down and stuck in a situation again where you're not fully fulfilled. So I think that's one of my fears, of being in a space where I'm only there because of a paycheck, and not because of purpose, not because that's where I'm called to be. And so I love that right now, even mentally, I'm like, God, any day, whatever you say, like I'm ready. One, because savings intact, but I trust him to provide at the same time too. So I think that's where I'm at, is just never wanting to be stuck in a bad place.
Anybody else? Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not capping when I say this, but I don't think right now I don't have any fears. I don't have any money fears. Not just because of my faith in God, because he's just shown me over the years that he'll always provide. And so I'm not even worried about not having money or anything like that. I think one fear that I may have had in the beginning was when I started investing, losing money. Because, in the beginning, I'm not gonna really know what I'm doing. Even after reading and taking or looking at videos, like, I'm going to be learning really at the beginning a lot. But even from there, like, I just kind of shifted my perspective and prepared myself to be able to learn from those losses and be able to learn from those lessons. And so I think just having a perspective, like, this is a journey. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, great all the time. So I think just having that perspective has made me realize there's really nothing to fear. And at the end of the day, like, I'm going to be wealthy. So it's, just trusting God along the way, and also trusting myself that I'll make good decisions. So yeah, I don't think right now I have any money fears.
We were not given the spirit of fear.
Mhm.
But to piggyback off of what Nia just said, and Nia, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. But what do you like to invest in and why?
So I'm just starting my investment journey. But right now I've been really focusing. First of all, I've been focusing on paying off a little of my credit card debt off. I don't have much, but once I'm done paying that off, I'm going to continue to invest more in my IRA.
Okay.
And that's really because I've heard that that was like a really good tool to start off with. There are so many videos out there on it. And it's, there are different ways to be able to invest without really losing too much and gaining over a long period of time. Like, my investment strategy is not like becoming a millionaire tomorrow. I definitely want to take my sweet precious time with it. And so I think just investing in that right now, just because of how many resources are out there about it, has been my go-to.
Gotcha. What about anybody else? What do you all like to invest in and why?
Right in this season in my life, I do invest in financial education and sharing it within the community, but also actively practicing it within my household.
Yeah.
And that's more so not necessarily just a tangible financial investment, but I do realize that the more successful families that can't be easily broken, that can't be easily invaded or torn down, are families that have a healthy and open perspective on how to manage money, because that affects their decision making, good and bad. And especially when they get out on their own, it affects who you choose to marry or who you choose to entertain. It affects how you pay for college, or whether you even want to go to college or not. So that's where I am. My husband and I, we've been very, especially over the last 2 years, we've been very, very adamant about teaching our 20-year-old daughter, as well as our 9-year-old daughter, and of course I'm pregnant with twins, getting prepared mentally and financially for that journey, in our household and not having that that fear or those habits that we've seen our other family members go through.
I've always been told to invest what goes in you and not what goes on you. So, yeah.
Yes, I was literally about to say, aside from the practical, yes, 401k, Roth IRAs, but investing in myself in this season has been the biggest thing. And so as much as people want you to put your money in, again, all these different stocks, have you taken inventory of yourself and what you need first before giving away your money to somebody else or something else? So I definitely feel like, yeah, I'm the investment right now.
So then this is just a sidebar, right? As women, we do absolutely everything, right? And so I would really like to know, what do you all actually do to just invest in yourself, whether it be as a woman or just as a hardworking individual? What are some of those things that you maybe splurge on just to invest in yourself so you can give back to yourself?
So I am a firm believer in self-care. I think self-care looks different for everyone, but for me, it's like getting a massage. I invest in myself every month for that. And that could cost, upward towards maybe like 100 or 200, depending on where you go. But I consider it an investment because I need to be my best self, to make a difference in this world and also to achieve my goals. And then also doing things like mani-pedis and getting out of the house and doing things, like I really invest in myself in those ways. And then also investing in different resources lately. Like we were just talking about, invest in yourself first before, giving your money to other people. I've been like purchasing, not too many, but like I purchased a crash course, for instance, on investment. I consider that an investment into myself and into my future. Buying different books, actually spending money on things outside of school so that I can start to, prepare my legacy and prepare a way, and prepare a certain lifestyle for my future children. And so, yeah, I invest in, different resources, and then materialistic things that people may disagree with, but yeah.
I want to hear from everybody on this one. What do y'all do?
And again, in this season in my life, because of where I am, this, I hope this is not as controversial, but I also believe in investing in my husband. Not just financially, but investing in a hardworking man,
yes,
that is responsible for taking care of your family.
Yep.
And when I say investment, and when I say investment, I mean investing not just in a financial sense, but making sure that he's encouraged and motivated to go out and do the work that me, as a woman, I don't want to do.
Right.
Like, I'm not trying to get out there and work 40 and 60 hours with you. No. So, and investing in him, investing in what he needs. Because let me tell you something. So, and I think that's something that is often overlooked in the culture of I'm every woman, this, that, or whatever. Let's not forget about our men.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things we really can't comfortably do unless we have their support in some type of way.
Right.
So I just want to touch on that.
I love that.
And I also want to say that there is nothing wrong with investing in a good man that got your back.
Yeah.
Because it makes life easier. And I see other cultures utilize that. They utilize that to their advantage.
Jewels dropping.
Yeah, I like that you said that he's also investing in you. It's a shared, investment, because sometimes Black women will pour and pour and pour into everybody else and not receive anything for themselves. And so it sounds like, again, there's balance within your relationship, which I love to hear. But for the original question, I guess investment in myself looks like similar to what Nia said. Yes, mani-pedis and massages, going to the chiropractor. For me, I love a good facial. Okay, I'm trying to, get my skin clear. I want to be glowing. And then I feel like right now I don't splurge as much on myself and my family. I'm definitely, they have nicknames for me, but I'm definitely tight with my money because I have my bigger goals. And so it's hard for me to splurge on myself, even with different, accomplishments that I've had. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll save up for a big treat to myself. So maybe that'll be my next car, but I really want to pay cash for my next car, and I want to pay cash for my home. So things like that. Sometimes I feel like I live with the end in mind, which is like my goals. And so it allows me to sometimes cut back on splurging a lot, but the minor things, the little things that aren't too expensive on a monthly basis, like the facials and stuff, definitely are for me. Going to the gym, making sure physically I'm fit and I'm not giving all of myself to the job or to everything else, and not making sure that I'm 100% physically, spiritually, emotionally. So making sure I'm going to church and things like that, connecting with community, listening to podcasts, reading books. I got to get back on my book game, but listening to podcasts has been a good substitute, and just getting that knowledge and getting different perspectives to grow, my own understanding and knowledge and wisdom and things like that. So definitely in a growth stage right now, but I think that self-care can come in so many different forms, but just making sure you set aside that time for you is so important, because otherwise somebody else will try to take your time if you do not have those boundaries and say, this is me time. This is, I don't want to talk. Don't email me. Don't anything. Like, put that phone on do not disturb.
Okay, so for me, I think I've mentioned I'm in my 40s now. So my number one theme of my life from now on is health is wealth.
Mm.
And the most important thing for me is mental health and physical health as well. So I spend a lot of time investing in that. First of all, I can't do anything if I'm not spiritually healthy, which directly affects me mentally. So, I definitely have to have that prayer time. I'm up at 4 a.m. every morning, with worship and a devotional to just get my day started. I've gotten my body trained to the extent that, friends and family know not to call me after 8 o'clock because I'm probably not going to answer. I'm probably asleep. So that's my number one thing. And then at 5:30, I started CrossFit. I'm in a CrossFit gym. I might go for a run after that. And I do all of that before 8:30 when I log in and get started for work. And I've been in that process for maybe about 3.5 years now. Like, I got started like right before 40, but I feel better and I am my best self when I am taking care of myself and I feel whole. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, Bernice, because that's actually how I met her. I met her through our local Black Girls Run chapter.
yeah, yeah,
Because we were doing a relay, the Mercedes-Benz
yeah.
marathon. And I tell you, during that season in my life, that was shortly after I had our first daughter. And, everyone in the group, we were doing 5Ks, 10Ks and all that. And the culture of that group was like, take care of yourself, push yourself forward. And when I tell you that's a game changer, when it comes to other areas of your life, especially getting your finances together. Oh, man. So I'm glad you mentioned that too, because that's very important.
Thank God for BGR.
I know, right?
So I guess I'll ask. I was gonna skip it, but being that I think I heard massages, spouses, mani, pedis, as well as health, and I know some of these you can't invest enough in, and I know some you can invest too much in. So how much is overdoing it or over investing, or is that even such a thing?
Oh, honestly, I would say, what's your budget? Because I can't name a number,
Okay.
and like that's my number, but that might not be your number. And so as long as you're not going into debt for this self-care, I feel like you should be okay. If you are, then maybe you need to reevaluate, look at some different avenues to have that self-care. Like Nia was saying, her massages might be 100 to 200 depending on where she goes. But the massage place I go to is $40 because I think it's students who are learning. But child, that massage is still on point, even if they're in the learning phases. So I think you can find different ways to have that self-care and still not break your budget, break your wallet or whatever it might be. But wouldn't name a specific number because, again, it depends on what your income looks like on a monthly basis, what you have to pay, what expenses you have, and then just put a percentage aside for yourself, basically. But yeah, no specific number. I wouldn't do that to y'all.
Yeah. And you pay attention to the outcomes too. Because I know there was a season when I couldn't afford to get a monthly massage, but I was working 40 to 60 hours a week. So I didn't have that self-care element to really put back into myself. But once I knew that every Tuesday at 9 a.m., my hot stone massage for an hour was for me, that little $60 wasn't nothing. So, so I was like, okay, I'll budget for that because that's what 2 meals at the Cheesecake Factory or something like that. So, yeah.
So I want to piggyback off of what Angel was saying, and say that, I often remind myself that every decision, even the lack of a decision, comes at the cost of something. So, the way to evaluate if you're overdoing it is not to evaluate what you're doing, but what you're giving up and what's the cost of what you're doing versus not doing. And that's where I tend to look at as far as where the balance lies for me.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. That's good. So many topics that I want to throw in here. I'm trying to pick which one.
Well, I just want to clarify for my massages.
Don't feel bad. No, don't feel bad.
No, I have discovered a tool called Groupon. And so in the past, I have spent, that much on, a little massage spa package, but, I'm lowering the price. I found one for $60. So, I'm getting there.
Saving, but still investing in yourself. I love it. Awesome. Okay. So with prices, specifically gas going up, curious to know, how do you all deal with lifestyle inflation? That can be gas, groceries, or any other items that continue to go up in price. How do you all deal with that?
I believe it's based on the need. And especially the times that we're living in. I think certain things are going up because we have also gotten away from the simple aspects of life. We at the beginning of the pandemic pretty much proved certain things as far as like our spending habits. And we had to go back to kind of like the 1950s, 1960s way of living. For some, that was normal. For some, that was like, so I think it depends on how much use certain people are going to get out of this simple parts of life. And it'll drive the price up, more if certain people are falling into one particular way.
Yeah, I remember this was before COVID had hit, but us as cousins, we were all just sitting around with our grandmother, and we were talking about how, or our grandmother was talking about how some of us don't ever have any money. And one of the comments was, "For the bills today wasn't the bills back then." The things have changed tremendously. And so I found it interesting that some of us deal very difficult with lifestyle inflation as opposed to others. And so just any other thoughts, I would really love to hear from like either Nia or Angel in regards to how you all kind of deal with things.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a college student so I'm from Chicago. I went to school in DC and I'm now in school in New York. So even with geographic locations, lifestyle, like the prices change dramatically. Like in New York, like it's, a little rough up here, but in Chicago it's different because I know where to go. And so for me, I just had to adapt like quickly. I'm like, okay, so I can't buy this because I need to buy this. And I think it just comes down to like identifying your needs versus your wants. And so I've had to scale back on my wants since being in New York, just to cover my needs. But I think like just adapting quickly asking people around me who are from the area, where should I go to buy groceries, just things like that. Just having to adapt and scale back on my wants is how I've been able to deal with it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Did that affect your decision to whether you wanted to decide to get a vehicle or not?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yes,
spend money on that?
absolutely, because even like the areas that I've been in, like Chicago, DC, and New York, have good like public transportation,
Yeah.
and factoring in like the cost of a car, even outside of the gas,
Yeah.
having to get it fixed, parking. There are just so many expenses associated with having a car, and so I definitely opted out of having one because it's too much money.
I would certainly agree.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially with like cars. So you said lifestyle in general, and Mcqueen, but when you were talking about the conversation with your grandma, like these bills are different. These things are so much more expensive when it comes to cars and even homes. Like people back in the day at 20 or even at 18 were like purchasing their first homes, and maybe they spent like 20K total, and now 20K is just the down payment for the homes now. So it's just such a different thing now. And for me, I'll say I've just had to learn to be patient and wait a little bit. So after college, instead of going out and getting my own apartment, I was like, hey, mom, I'm going to come back home. We'll split these bills, 50-50, but I know it'll still be cheaper than me living on my own. And then I'll save up for my own place, and maybe a car later down the line. But right now, these cars are expensive. I feel like I'm just keep fixing up my little used car that I've had since high school until it just gives out on me. So my next goal is really a house, but again, car is maybe in the plan, but I feel like just right now saving and being patient, and that means putting off certain things. No, I'm not, living on my own right now, but that's okay because I know what my end goal is.
Right.
Because it's mad expensive out.
And there's like nothing wrong with, we were talking about this, there's nothing wrong with living with your parents, especially if you have financial goals that you want to achieve. And we were talking about, there are people out here struggling just because they don't want to, seem uncool for living with their parents. But if it were up to me, if I didn't like have to move back to the DC area for my job, I would go back home and stack my money and help my mom around the house, really because it's more affordable. And so I don't know if there are teenagers or college students watching, but if you have the option to go live with your parents while you save your money and help them around the house, I definitely encourage you to do that, because there are just so many benefits to doing so.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there was one thing that my family told me that I kind of overlooked until I was really at the crossroads. They said, no matter what, you can always come back home if you need to get on your feet. But sometimes, especially when you're raised to be so independent and not ask anybody for anything, you're like, no, I'm just going to thug it out. I don't care if I got to eat ramen noodles and all that. But, sometimes going back home and sharing a bathroom with your family, helping split the bills, not only does it humble you, but it gives you some time if you need to get back on your feet. So it is okay. It's not the end of the world.
I just want to highlight, because I think this is a great point that both Nia, Angel, and Sharonda have made. And this is a financial concept, even though it's not a financial word, and that is delayed gratification. The microwave society that we live in, people don't want to take their time to build. It's almost like I got to get it now because I'm supposed to have it, especially among recent college students. And I was guilty of that coming out of college. I felt like, I have my degree now, I've arrived. So I reward myself and have this and that, but 75-80% of my paycheck was going to somebody else. And I was struggling and maxing out my credit cards because I didn't learn that concept early enough.
I think that is so good. I was just moderating a different panel for my alma mater, and one of the students asked me afterwards, what is the one trap that I should avoid after college? And I told them just that. Like you said, after college, you can fall into that trap of comparison of my peers are doing this, they're moving here, they're buying that, they're buying this. And I had to tell them, like, you are running your own race. Don't look to the right and left, because that is when you start accumulating that unnecessary debt, trying to keep up with the Joneses, or now it's keeping up with the Kardashians now. Like, you trying to keep up with this Instagram society of showing, with flexing with this and that. But it's like, no, when I look at my finances, I want to be happy with the decisions I made at the end of the day, not trying to impress somebody else. And a saying says that I have on the shirt says, impact, not impress. So when I live to impact others instead of trying to impress them, I think it really just shifts your mindset. And now I get to share, okay, it's okay to go back home after college. It's okay to not update your car just because everybody else is updating it. But when you look at the goals you have for yourself, I assure you that it'll pay off in the long run. So I love that
Yeah.
you mentioned that.
And even to add on to that, like social media, you have to remember that social media paints literally one side of the picture. So you got people who may be buying their own houses, but their parents may have bought it actually, or you have someone who has their own apartment, but they live in Kansas or something. Like, it's a lot more affordable, a lot more easy to own property down south versus somebody who may be from the Midwest or the West Coast or even the East Coast. And so just remember, like, especially when it comes to social media and other people's, flexes, that it's only one side of the story. We don't know the rest. We don't know what they had to go through, to get whatever they've attained. So try not to be too, like, social media can be a great tool, but it could also be very detrimental. But try not to, get caught up with what everyone else's journey is. Like Angel said, your journey is your journey. So if you buy a house at 40, that's cool. If you pay your car off by 60, like, that's cool. It's your journey.
Yeah, one saying I've heard is, don't compare your behind the scenes to somebody else's highlight reel. And I feel like Instagram is literally their highlight reel. And you're sitting at home like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting on my couch with ice cream. But this is just your behind the scenes. You can have that moment where you shine too, but you don't always have to post it. And you don't, but I think it's great to just take those breaks sometimes from social media, because although it can be good, it can also do some damage to certain people. So just make sure, again, you can handle it when you get out there, but don't compare your behind the scenes to their glitz and glam.
I also think it's very important to be, especially when you get to a certain point in your life, especially when you're teaching, because most of the time I'm in the role of a teacher. And even sometimes I have to share my own experiences and share my own, struggles. Even though I'm in the mortgage industry, there was one point in time where I had a 491 credit score. And I remember that. And I remember what it was like even being in the industry and helping people get homes. However, I was in a bind. And sometimes you do have to, it's rare to run across people that's willing to put certain things out there, like, okay, I was down in the dumps, or you were down in the dumps, but this is how you came out of the struggle. And no, it was not fun. It was hard. You even have to go through times where you're like, okay, let me take a step back, so that when you do see, like, oh, okay, things are going great, you can know, like, I understand, and I'm explaining this to you because I have been there. I have been that broke college student. I have been that woman that's in the mid-20s with terrible credit and NSF fees, but now I'm working for a bank and helping educate and saying, I get it. I understand. So it's very good. And what I like about you two ladies, that you're able to talk about, okay, I went through college and I didn't have any student loans. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many people need to hear that? So yeah, definitely keep with that message, because that is something that a lot of people feel that they can't achieve. And it cuts out the excuses too, you know?
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much. I was going to add in one more, but we are at the time. And so I hope that this demonstrated how simple, maybe not easy, but how simple it is to have a discussion around finances. All of us have different walks, different experiences, different education, as well as income and backgrounds. But being able to hear different perspectives and what's right for someone may not be right for you. But being able to hear those different perspectives can help us move forward or teach us the exact things that we don't necessarily need to do. And so I hope this all helped you all. And I will now refer it back to Bernice to close us out.
All right. Girls, this was great. I absolutely enjoyed this session as well as working with you. And I do appreciate you joining alongside myself in the journey of just really helping our community in the area of economic empowerment. I know that we're in this age of social justice, and I don't take that lightly, but I also believe that a level of freedom in that social justice is in economic empowerment. And so, as an organization, we are doing our part to get the message out there. And I appreciate you guys coming alongside to help in that journey. A couple of things I want to mention. I want to mention again McQueeba's FIQ questions. I believe you can get this on www.fiqquestions.com. Is that correct, McQueeba?
Yep, FI question.
So if you want to order these flashcards, let me put it in the camera here. You can get them. Please do take the flashcards, take them home, use them with your family, use them with your colleagues so that we can continue this discussion along with the community. And then I don't want to put Angel and Neil on the spot, but this is our last session for the fiscal year, but we are still actively planning to kick off another season starting the fall of this year. And so we're in the middle of planning. It is my hope that I can get Angel and Neil back for a session just on their book to talk about in detail, how did they get out of college debt? Yeah. I think that's worth a discussion as a session by itself. And we'll have plenty other, people in the works too, to kind of continue to hone in, deep dive, and address these topics. If there's anything that you'd like to see us address on this platform, feel free to email me at finedu@nabasouthern.com. And it's, like the first three letters of finance, the first three letters of education at nabasouthern.com. So just in case my Southern accent, you can't hear what I'm trying to say. But again, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll be back on this same platform in September. In the meantime, stay safe, continue to be well, and we wish you all the best in your financial journey.